PK in the universe, and I'm back again with another video. Sorry about my voice. I've been fighting a little something for the last couple weeks. But anyways, let's get on to the video. I want to talk about the Hyper Megatech Super Pocket. I did get the Taito version. I talked about this recently. It's been a couple weeks. I've been, playing quite a little bit of it. It's got a great number of games. I mean, that's my review really of it is, it's got 18 games. Super fun. You just turn it on, it works. That's what I love about these little systems. It turns on, it works. Maybe you're a new Hyper Megatech Super Pocket owner. Maybe you've never owned any of the Evercade stuff. Maybe you don't own an Evercade VS or EXP or even the OG Evercade. So you might be wondering, what the heck is an Evercade cart? Why do I have this slot here? You probably looked on the box and said, oh, this thing takes Evercade carts. What are Evercade carts? Okay, so that's what this video is about. It's kind of focusing on the new Super Pocket owners who maybe don't have any prior experience with Evercade cartridges. So let's go over what Evercade cartridges are. So Evercade cartridges, there's a lot of misconceptions. I see a lot of misinformation on the internet. Some people say, oh, somebody just took an SD card and they put a case around it. That's not true. So what these are basically are, it's a PCB board and it's basically had a flash memory soldered to it. So yes, these cards can be reflashed. Just like, for example, if you bought an NES card at AliExpress or something, that cart could be reflashed. It's flash memory. What it is not is an SD card that's just happened to be encased in, a different kind of cartridge. That's not really true. I feel like it's more similar to a Game Boy Advanced cartridge than it is to just an SD card or something like that. So I want to get that out of the way, what an Evercade cartridge is, because I've made videos about this. I still get people once a month be like, I heard Evercade cartridges are just an SD card with a case around it, and it's like, I can't fight it, honestly. Misinformation's going to be out there, but I wanted people who are new to Evercade stuff to, if they saw this video, I wanted to explain that ahead of time. So what's interesting about Evercade cartridges, unlike a lot of, traditional read-only memory, is these cartridges are updatable. That's right. They can be updated through updates via the Evercade VS and Evercade EXP. So a lot of people who are, buying the Super Pocket might not be able to update some of these carts if they're getting it brand new, sealed, never opened, never had any kind of update done to it. So that could be a problem. It might not be a big deal at all. It just depends on what the cartridge is. From what I've been able to decipher and gather, and this number will change, of course, because new carts are added all the time, is there's about 28 different cartridges that have had some kind of update, at least one kind of update. It might be something super minor, like, oh, we changed something in the UI instructions, because when you go on to the cartridge, there'll be like a description maybe, or button configuration. Maybe it's something so minor as they change the button configuration or they change the description. Some are more major, which is why I'm talking about the Evercade cartridges to avoid and the Evercade cartridges to perhaps consider checking out at this time. And again, this could all change too. This isn't going to be necessarily an evergreen video because, things are always changing, with Evercade cartridges. So let's go over the ones I personally think you should avoid. Now, again, this is just my opinion based on what I know about these particular carts. Let's talk about Technos 1 Arcade. Technos 1 Arcade is basically the pack-in game for the Evercade VS. And there's one game on here that is totally unplayable without an update, and that is Mania Challenge. Mania Challenge, basically, if you have not had your cart updated and you go out of the ring, you won't be able to get back in. It makes the game completely unplayable. There's a lot of great games on here nonetheless, though. But yeah, Mania Challenge will not play unless this cart's updated. So perhaps consider avoiding this one for now. Up next, we have Megacat 2. Oh, Megacat 2, I've had some issues with this cart over the past, especially this particular one. I had bought it, and at one point I had done some updates, and it actually wouldn't play. So what I ended up doing was cleaning the contacts, and it worked just fine. That was a weird situation. But there are at least 3 games that have issues on here. For example, Devwell Tumo and Yazzie both had pretty significant updates, if I'm not mistaken. In fact, when I first put this in the Evercade VS, that's the games they wanted to update immediately. And then, of course, you have Ranu's Tale. Ranu's Tale is a game that when this was originally put on the Evercade cartridge, and there's a little piece of paper in here, it says that this is not the full version, so The idea was they put the game on there and then they would update it later when the full version was actually released on NES. So that's what you do. There is a full version of this game on this particular cartridge of mine, but that's because I updated it through my Evercade VS. So if you get this collection and you don't have an Evercade VS or EXP to update it, you might not get the full experience. So perhaps consider avoiding this until you've gotten one of those systems, or if there ever is any kind of patch update for Super Pockets. So yeah, perhaps consider steering clear of this one. Up next, we got the Jalico collection. Here's the thing. I guess you really don't technically need to avoid it, but they've made some pretty significant changes recently with this one. The one that really caught me off guard was Rival Turf. Now, the Rival Turf, this was the, North American version on this particular cartridge. So what Blaze ended up doing is they actually swapped the ROM out with the Japanese version when you update it. And the Japanese version is the superior version, so good on Blaze for doing that. But at the same time, if somebody's got this game brand new, puts it in their Super Pocket, guess what? You're playing the standard Rival Turf that came out here in North America. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but still, there's been some other updates I think as well done on this one. So perhaps consider avoiding this until you get an Evercade VS or Evercade EXP. And finally, this is a cart that will be updated, but has not been updated at the time of this recording. So, and that's the Always Awakening Cathedral Double Pack. Always Awakening works just fine on the Super Pocket. Works great. Love it. Cathedral will not play at all, and Blaze is very much aware of this. This was originally a native port. Now, future native ports obviously are going to work great because the devs who are, making the native ports are aware of the Super Pocket's existence, so there's already a patch for those, within development. This one, the developer put this game out before we even knew there was going to be a Super Pocket, and they're still working on the patch. So at the time of this recording, this has not been updated. It is completely unplayable. You go to the screen, and it'll even tell you this game is not supported. It's the only game right now at the time of this recording that is not supported. So perhaps consider avoiding this for now until there is some kind of update, though there are a lot of other ways to play Cathedral, of course. I would be negligent if I didn't mention that. They're getting played on Switch and a bunch of other consoles, so perhaps consider checking it out this way. But if you want to own the physical version down the road, get this, maybe there's going to be an update very soon. So those are the cartridges I would avoid. That's just my personal opinion based on the fact that those games require some kind of updates. Some are more major, some are more minor than others. But most games will play fine in some way. There's games that periodically have had glitches, especially in the early days of when Blaze first started the Evercade stuff. They didn't have as big a team as they do now. So I feel like lately it seems like more of the cartridges that have been coming out have had less hiccups, with the exception of like Team 17. I've heard a lot of stories about glitches on that. I don't have that cartridge personally, but that's what a lot of people have told me. I'm not a complete Evercade collector. I don't have any interest in getting the complete collection. I'm never buying Worms collection. Not going to happen. But before I start talking about the games that I think you should get, I want to talk about the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room. I want to talk about the elephant in the room. This is a nice little $60 device. And I heard somebody say something along the lines of, oh, I'll get it when it's cheaper and I could hack it, which is such a ridiculous thing to say because guess what, folks? There's no SD card. There's no SD card that you can just hook up to this thing. I mean, price-wise, money-wise, if you're going to spend $60 and you plan to, quote, hack it, you might as well wait for a sale and grab an RG35XX, honestly. I just got one of these pretty recently, and it has dual SD cards, and you can... Here's the thing. This is a very different audience. It's a very different audience that's buying this compared to the Super Pocket audience. Let me tell you what the difference is, folks. Here's the Super Pocket, and here's the RG35X. Same size, right? Well, here's the thing about it. The games on here are officially licensed. And when you buy an Evercade cartridge, that's officially licensed. That means the developer or publisher or rights holder got a little piece of this, each time, they, Blaze, paid them some money and it's officially licensed. Whereas this is filled with like bootlegs, and unauthorized copies, I guess you'd want to call it, which I'm not here to judge anybody who chooses to do that. But the thing is too, this is for tinkerers. This is for people who want something that just works, honestly. And that's what it does. And sometimes the quality is just all over the place with something like this. For example, the two games that I tested on both systems are Growl. Growl, of course, was in this collection and it's on here too, actually, the arcade version. And, Now, the screen looks significantly better. As you can tell, there's a much bigger screen on this one. But here's the catch. The audio on here is terrible, whereas the audio on here just works. It works exactly how it's intended. Like this thing had like Final Fantasy VII on it, but guess what? It was the Japanese version, you know? You got to mess around with things like this, you know? Whereas when you get something like this, it just plain works, period. You know, it is what it is. You got what you got. Whereas something like this, you know, you're like browsing forever and ever trying to figure out what the heck to play. You know, so two totally different audiences. I just want to address this elephant in the room because somebody always brings it up. It's like, why would I buy something like this when I could just, you know, buy something like this? Well, it's because they're two totally different audiences. This is for somebody who wants the experience of retro gaming on how it used to be to an extent, you know, where it's just like, oh, you can buy cartridges just like the original Game Boy. And that's what I like about the Super Pocket. It invokes the nostalgia of the original Game Boy Pocket, which is one thing I really enjoy about this, you know. But now that I got that little rant out of the way, let's get into some games that I think would be really interesting choices for people who are new to Super Pocket, new to Evercade, that some games that I would strongly recommend checking out. And some of these games actually have original Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance games on them. So that was part of the criteria of why I picked this. And some were just, oh, this just game looks cool. That's why I picked it. So are you a sports fan or a racing fan? Then a collection I would strongly recommend is Pico Interactive 2. This collection gets a lot of hate because Pico Interactive 1 is such a good collection. Pico Interactive 1 has like 20 games on it, you know, and there's a lot of high quality ones compared to this one. But this has got a lot of great sports games. And there's a lot of us who, you know, grew up playing sports games, grew up playing racing games like myself. So, you know, that's what I do like about it. You know, it's got Top Racer 2, which is basically Top Gear 2, Racing Fever, Beast Ball, and Soccer Kid are some other notable games on here. Yeah, this collection is kind of underrated, I think. I feel like this is one of those collections that's really under the radar and people just don't really appreciate. So yeah, if you love sports games and racing games, this is a cart to absolutely get. I would highly recommend it. Plus, Pico Interactive 1 is a cartridge that's out of production. It's one of the legacy cartridges. I didn't really go into too much detail with the legacy cartridges, but at the time of this recording, there are 10 legacy cartridges, in which what that means is basically those games are out of production. I would avoid most of those, honestly, especially Technos Collection 1, not to be confused with Technos Arcade Collection 1, which I mentioned earlier, because that game is going for like $75 to $100 at the time of this recording because it's really out of production. Like nobody has copies of it. And, you know, honestly, there's a lot of places you can play those games, other places even legally for that matter, you know, right now. So I would avoid that collection. If you are going to get some of the legacy cartridges, yeah, get Pico Interactive 1. That's a no-brainer. Also, Atari Lynx Collections 1 and 2 are collections I would highly recommend just because, you know, it's handheld games, you know, it's handheld collections basically that play great on the Super Pocket. So I would definitely recommend those. Everything else, honestly, I would just avoid, honestly. I don't think it's worth it unless you are a complete Evercade collector. So, but yeah, I'd recommend those games as well. Next up, we got the Sunsoft Collection. This Sunsoft collection is incredible. It's got Blaster Master, it's got Journey to Silius, Arrow the Acrobat. It's also got Blaster Master Boy, which is a original Game Boy game. I didn't even know there was a Game Boy version of Blaster Master. That's another game that just looks great on the Super Pocket. So definitely consider checking this one out. Full Void. Holy cow, I absolutely love Full Void. You know, this is an incredible cinematic adventure. It's actually the first single Evercade cartridge, because before that they were doing dual carts and multi-carts, but this is actually just a single cartridge. Yeah, if you like cinematic adventures such as Another World and Flashback, this might be worth checking out. It's a pretty short game, but still really fun, and it's cool. You like basically you're running from this rogue AI and you're like this silent protagonist. It's pretty darn fun, definitely worth checking out. As I said before, you know, perhaps wait on getting the Cathedral Always Awakening dual pack because, again, the game doesn't work. But a dual pack that you should definitely check out is the Xenocrisis Tanglewood collection. You know, I bought this with Xenocrisis in mind. I was like, I've always wanted to play that Xenocrisis game because I've heard so many people talk so much about it. But I really fell in love with Tanglewood, man. This is a game that's very unique. You know, both these games originally were on Sega Genesis. I mean, Xenocrisis is on like everything. It's ridiculous. But, yeah, Tanglewood is so darn charming. Just an immersive game and just a pretty color palette for, you know, Sega Genesis stuff. I don't want to give away too much about the game, but definitely one of those side-scrolling platformers that you definitely should check out. And it really, it's a puzzle game too. You got to think about, what you're doing a little bit here and running away from stuff. It's really freaking cool. Definitely worth checking out. Probably one of my favorite collections of all time on Evercade, and that is Indie Heroes. The original Indie Heroes collection has a lot of cool Game Boy games on it, and it's just perfect to play on the Super Pocket, such as Dedius, Quest Arrest, Chain Break, and of course Aguna, which is a Game Boy Advance game. This was the first Game Boy Advance game, I think. Don't quote me on that. It was on Evercade. Maybe there was one on the Worms collection. I could be wrong. But this collection has a lot of great Game Boy games that are very memorable. It's also got Flea. Flea is a fantastic side-scrolling puzzle type game. And it's also from the same creator as Tapeworm Disco Puzzle, which is on Indie Heroes 2. Also, Doodle World is on here. There's going to be a Doodle World redrawn on Indie Heroes 3, which comes out next year. So there's a lot of awesome games on here that I can't say enough about that look great on the Super Pocket, and I would definitely recommend. So there you have it, folks. Those are some games I think you should avoid and games I think you should get. That's just my opinion based on my experience with these. I have 30-some Evercade cartridges. I don't have the full set, but these are games that I really enjoyed. So what are your guys' thoughts? What's your favorite Evercade cartridge, and what's an Evercade cartridge that you would recommend to somebody who just got a Super Pocket and doesn't know anything about Evercade? Comment below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and stay awesome in this universe. Thanks.